Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to our Navigating Cloud Chaos Strategies for Streamlining Your IaaS presentation. We will be giving 2 more minutes for folks to join, and then we will be beginning. Okay, I think we can begin. Again, thank you everyone for joining. Um, Jason, do you want to start by presenting yourself?
So my name is Jason Cooper. I'm coming to you from Detroit, Michigan in the US. I've been with Netrix Global now for about 4 years. I am a cloud architect with a background in both on-prem and cloud infrastructure and applications. My focus is on multi-cloud and hybrid cloud deployments.
My name is Maximiliano Yang. I'm coming to you from Buenos Aires, Argentina. I'm the team lead from one of our projects here at Cloud Operations Managed Services. And my focus and expertise is mainly on operations.
Today, we're going to walk you through an approach to implementing cloud operations or CloudOps. We're going to provide an overview and establish an understanding of what cloud operations means, what the role of CloudOps is in cloud computing, the components of CloudOps, and some of the best practices for a successful CloudOps implementation.
We'll also be looking at 2 success stories from companies that have optimized their cloud ops with us, and we'll also be talking about best practices for cloud ops performance optimizations, and then a quick summary and a call to action.
So we'll start by defining CloudOps. The one pun they let me slip in this presentation is that it's nebulous. CloudOps is a movement amongst IT providers, which strives to standardize procedures and best practices for resources in the cloud, building out processes and delivery mechanisms to basically apply a code development approach to managing your cloud infrastructure. It is a management standard for owning resources in the cloud. It maps very closely to the well-architected framework that Microsoft and AWS discuss. If you've gone through any of their deployment planning resource opportunities, including reliability, security, cost optimization, performance, efficiency, and operational excellence. Specifically, CloudOps maps pretty closely to the reliability, performance, efficiency, and operational excellence pillars of the well-architected frameworks. We're not leaving out the sustainability pillar that shows up in the AWS well-architected framework. It doesn't really have a play with regards to CloudOps, but it certainly bears mention. The idea being that CloudOps gives you the opportunity to define your next generation network operations center. So a NOC 2.0 that takes advantage of the agile reiterative deployment process, planning, development, testing, deployment, operations, and we've all seen the graphic of planning feeding development, feeding testing, driving deployment into operations, and then all of that cycling back around to new analysis and planning for the next phase. But we really talk about platform design and engineering, how to most effectively integrate the various types of cloud architecture, how to modify your cloud operations around a cloud ops approach, how application development standards apply once you've moved your enterprise to the cloud. Always focusing on information and network security. So CloudOps stands next to DevOps and security ops, and of course FinOps. And last but not least, a CloudOps approach really does come to bear when you start talking about regulatory compliance like HIPAA or PCI DSS. Depending on where you are in your cloud adoption journey, most of the organizations that we work with today, their early phases of cloud adoption was using the cloud as basically a co-located data center, leveraging infrastructure as a service, often forklifting migrations of virtual machines into the cloud, often a hybrid cloud approach, using on-prem Active Directory to populate the cloud directory or as a source of authority for authentication. A lot of manual configuration in the graphical user interface. This is high cost and it's human intensive. However, it's comfortable because basically you're running virtual machines in the cloud. Moving to infrastructure as a service in Azure or AWS eliminates the high cost and management of on-prem hardware, but you're still managing virtual machines in the cloud. So again, there's a comfort factor there that makes it an easy first step into the cloud. For most of the medium and large size clients that we work with that have adopted the cloud in this fashion, they've implemented solutions in the cloud and they're doing all of their testing in their production environment. They often come to us because they're looking to establish a development environment or a planning and development platform to allow developers and other technologists in their organization to have a workspace that doesn't impact the production environment. If there is automation in the early phases of cloud adoption, it's often done through tools like PowerShell, the Azure CLI, or the AWS CLI. And probably most everyone participating in this presentation today is familiar both with the benefits and the drawbacks of using the cloud infrastructure as a service. One of the big complaints that we hear from organizations that went all in on the IaaS model is unexpected cost overruns and the technology sprawl that can result from a rapid adoption of the cloud in the infrastructure as service model. CloudOps deployment proposes to leverage infrastructure as code, and we'll talk about this a little more later. But you have quite a few infrastructure as code opportunities in the various cloud platforms. You have native AWS services like CloudFormation with YAML and JSON-based deployments, both with CloudFormation templates and using OpWorks. You have Azure Resource Manager templates, ARM templates in Azure, and Bicep. I've already mentioned using the various CLI and PowerShell and other tools such as Chef, Puppet, Ansible, all of which qualify as infrastructure as code. The one that Netrix has settled on being multi-cloud, facilitating hybrid cloud, and also leveraging some platform as a service is HashiCorp's Terraform. All of these facilitate package deployment, managed configuration, leveraging a CI/CD pipeline like your DevOps environment might use to streamline operations across not just multi-cloud, but also into platform as a service. And if your software as a service vendors have exposed APIs, also into your SaaS providers. For us, the nice thing about HashiCorp Terraform is that it's platform agnostic, and you can, with some obvious differences between the various platforms, you can leverage Terraform skill sets across multiple cloud providers. By implementing a CloudOps approach and taking advantage of the best practices that CloudOps recommends, you start out with solutions built for the cloud. You're no longer picking up virtual machines, forklifting them into the cloud. You're actually deploying them from scratch and taking advantage of the latest features and the latest cost optimizations that you get from cloud-based deployments.
And these deployments, when in the cloud, they will be, of course, much faster. Most cloud providers do have a few pipeline solutions that are integrated into their cloud services, and this will allow you to deploy in a faster way, and it will be more, it will be automated, and you will be able to avoid human errors.
And the automation is key there. As Maxi already mentioned, speed and eliminating human error, but the automation absolutely drives standardization across, not just within your dev staging and prod environments, but also across your various cloud platforms and on-prem, and leverages standardization across instances to take advantage of some of the rapid expansion capabilities in the cloud.
Yes, and with that automation also comes auto-scaling and improvements on your load balancing. Now, let's think about a situation in which you encounter a higher volume of network traffic on your services that maybe you just weren't expecting, right? Well, with the cloud, you will be able to auto-scale your infrastructure and ensure to be able to provide that service to your customers in a much better way.
And not only do you get to test your deployments in a dev staging UAT pipeline and make your environments identical across the various layers of your application platform. Once you've got your deployment in prod, it is very easy with pipeline-based deployments using UAC to make replicas of your prod environment rapidly for one-off testing, debugging, and troubleshooting by your development and IT teams.
And another great thing about the cloud is that you do not need to use just one provider, right? We all know there's Azure, there's AWS, there's Google Cloud, and much more. And you can select any of those. You can use just one, multiple of them, or even you can also have connections to your own data centers in case you have a need to do so. Uh, so that's a great pro on the cloud.
And all of these dominoes here, as they fall, once you adopted an infrastructure as code approach to your cloud operations, and you're using a tool set like Jira or Azure DevOps, Trello, Team Leader, um, not only do you get easily manage change control with those platforms, it doesn't just apply to your custom code, but also to your infrastructure. You also get auditable deployment tracking, and as I mentioned earlier, um, easy to provide compliance reports for the for meeting basic controls around your PCI DSS frameworks, your HIPAA compliance, and other industry standard compliance platforms. When we talk about best practices for streamlining your cloud deployments, we really put them in three pillars: planning, preparing, and maintaining. Um, in planning, Netrix will come into a client environment and help consolidate authentication into one central point of authentication, whether that's IAM and AWS, or Azure conditional authentication. We really we specialize in choosing a single point of authentication and applying that across all of your cloud and on-prem platforms to minimize the overhead of managing multiple clouds, multiple SaaS and PaaS providers. Along the same terms, consolidating management across platform. The only buzzword I think I'll use in this whole presentation is single pane of glass. And when you have the capabilities of viewing all your Azure and AWS resources and on-prem resources in one console for the purposes of security, management, compliance, policy-based enforcement, that's the kind of planning that really does streamline your CloudOps operation. The preparation pillar involves focusing on that CI/CD pipeline, making sure that all of your infrastructure as code is checked into a centralized repository for code management, so that it can be collaborated on, go through approvals. When you have issues, you're prepared for debugging because you've got all your code in a one-stop shop with change tracking enabled, and you can see what changed, roll back changes, and leverage all of the benefits and features of a pipeline-based deployment. And again, as we've said a couple of times, all of this leverages automation, specifically with regards to scalability. Scaling up and scaling down is substantially easier when you're deploying resources with code instead of through the GUI. And your ongoing maintenance is, again, CloudOps assists with that by having policy-based enforcement, building out strong policies that map to your IT policy, your IT written policies, and your cloud frameworks. Sorry, your compliance frameworks, and your standardization of deployment makes your implementations ubiquitous across cloud platforms and on-prem. Again, you might be leveraging Chef or Puppet or Ansible or AWS CloudFormation or Azure Resource Manager templates. What we're about to jump into is the conversation about leveraging Terraform. When we talk about the new model for cloud management. In your IaaS solution, when you've forklifted virtual machines into the cloud, you've used the various migration tools to lift and shift your VMs out into AWS or Azure. That's a traditional service per VM deployment, and where you start to meet many of the cost mitigation and complexity mitigation components of the cloud is when you start moving to alternatives to having, say, SQL in a VM instead of running Postgres or MariaDB in a VM in the cloud. Both AWS and Azure have robust managed SQL and cloud database instances that are both more robust, scale more effectively, and come at a much more appealing price point to the folks in the finance department, with a much less complex licensing consideration. The same applies to web app services. If you're running web services and on a Windows box or a Linux box, both AWS and Azure have platform as a service web application alternatives where your developers can push code straight into native PaaS solutions and allow you to eliminate those expensive virtual machines and all the various components that come with them, like monitoring and antivirus and patching. Your cloud storage is, I'm not even going to try to list the alternatives to SMB and NFS storage on-prem in both AWS and Azure. As you go through the various services offered by the cloud providers, one of the places where they have implemented multiple services, depending on your needs, is with regards to storage, be it S3 or in AWS or Azure storage accounts. Of course, if you've adopted DevOps and you're trying to move into the cloud for scalability, you've learned about microservices, and both AWS and Azure have robust Kubernetes containers and related orchestration components that are an excellent alternative to deep and wide web server farms for hosting web-based APIs and web-based user interfaces. I can't imagine implementing machine learning without leveraging the power of cloud-based resources. It is both expensive and complex to implement machine learning, and both AWS and Azure have are trying to play catch up with Google in regards to machine learning and artificial intelligence, and really I just can't imagine trying to build machine learning on-prem. And then finally, maybe the highest achievement of any platform is to move to a SaaS alternative where literally all you're managing is your own users and your own data, and all of the application management, all of the platform management, all of the hardware management falls on the SaaS provider to replace not just IaaS but also SaaS. What we're talking about that sort of correlates one-to-one with the arrows on the top of the screen is and the previous tab where we talked about some of the desired end states of a CloudOps implementation. Our out-of-the-box offering is leveraging Azure Arc to centralize cloud management, both to centralize management, not just for hybrid cloud, but also on-prem, to provide a lot of the strengths of Azure monitoring and enforcement in hybrid and multi-cloud environments. The pipeline that we use, and both of the case studies we're going to talk about use, is Azure DevOps and GitHub um, for centralizing storage and collaboration on their infrastructure as code. In both cases, Terraform was the cloud deployment IaaS solution of choice. Once you've adopted Azure Arc and you're using Azure as your single pane of glass, it facilitates using Microsoft Defender for Cloud, not just in Azure, but also in AWS and also on-prem, and monitoring those solutions with Azure Monitor. All of these components were in play in the case studies that Maxie and I are going to be talking about here in just a minute. The important thing to understand about CloudOps is it's not a set of rules. This isn't a dogmatic set of prescriptive requirements. It's really a collaborative framework. You can think of it as an outline that then you tailor to the needs of your IT organization. Where Netrix is going to try to start you on your CloudOps journey is with a DevOps strategy. This has been stated a couple of times, but it's here in one slide for easy consumption. A centralized code repository for your infrastructure as code, whether that's JSON or Terraform recipes, using Azure DevOps or Jira to store your various versions of your IaaS deployments, gives you not just peer review and approval, also version control, active collaboration, so that in those daily stand-ups, it's easy to see what progress has been made, and to account for any changes in case bugs are come up during a deployment. This is not something that a partner can necessarily help you with, because training and standardization are key to a CloudOps approach. In much the same way you want everybody in your DevOps organization to understand your CI/CD pipeline solution, to understand the components of the applications they're developing, you really want to start with a common understanding for everyone in the organization about the cloud platforms in play, about the pipeline in play, and about the IaaS toolset. Investing in a methodology, we talk a lot about agile, but there are other methodologies that can be used. But adopting that methodology and sticking to it, including effective change tracking, is a critical component of the early adoption of a CloudOps approach. And finally, bringing in experienced resources like Netrix, who can help remove the hurdles, avoid the pitfalls in the road towards implementing a CloudOps approach, and really taking advantage of the kinds of results that our clients have seen in the case studies that we're about to talk about.
Thank you, Jason. And of course, if anybody here has any questions on these case studies, please feel free to share them on the questions side of this presentation. The first customer that we will be talking about is an US SaaS provider. This project started off back in 2019, which is when also I joined that project. So the starting point for it was that the customer had data centers across the US, mostly due to proximity latency. In case you were in the East Coast or the West Coast, you would have a better service if a data center was near to you. The uptime commitment in that case was of 99.5%. Automated deployments faced connectivity issues. In some cases, we had to go into the nodes, we had to apply manual changes. It wasn't that agile, so to speak, to perform updates on their services. We had a possibility or a probability of P0 incidents due to data center outages, meaning a whole region could go dark for an amount of time, and there was no workaround to it. We could not just build servers out of thin air and start their working with our customers again. And also, any infrastructure changes that we wanted to do require data center work, which meant we needed to contact the data center, go back and forth with them, and apply those changes as needed. Now, in 2020, we helped this customer and we worked with them to move to the cloud. Um, from that moment, the uptime commitment was changed from 99.5 to 3 nines. And in the past month, we even reached 99.95% of uptime. The incident trend was also reduced by 40%, and the deployment times reduced by 84%, mostly because we started using Azure DevOps pipelines with Ansible, and this eliminated any type of human error. There's no need for us to go into the nodes anymore to apply any change at all, and this is, of course, very agile. Now, all of the infrastructure that we deploy with this customer is now done with Terraform, and it's fully automated. We can use we can create servers literally out of thin air, and there are some cases in which you need more environments, different environments, or anything. Well, that's all automated. That's all standard, and it's a better way for us to work with the services. And of course, it's faster. And the possibility of running into a Sub-Zero or P0 incident due to a data center outage is reduced to zero, because in a very remote case in which Azure may encounter an issue or something like that, we can go ahead and deploy new infrastructure in no time, configure the services as needed, and we can continue to provide the service that we do in the same way we always do. And if you ask me, this was a great improvement for the customer and for their clients as well. Now, of course, our partnership continues with them, and as of today, we Netrix have full ownership of the incident and problem management process. We also have a shared ownership with them of the deployment and automation process, meaning we work on the pipelines, we continue to improve them. That 84% that I showed on the last slide continues to rise, meaning the deployments are continually becoming faster. We're also a trusted advisor for CloudOps implementations, meaning we take part on all conversations that are about infrastructure changes or improvements. We also review their spending improvements using FinOps standards, and being a trusted advisor on cloud implementation allowed us to find ways for them to reduce their spendings in the cloud. And we also have, of course, a shared ownership of their monitoring improvements and alerting improvements, meaning if there's any issue that they are not aware of, we probably will find it. We will create alerting and monitoring for it, and we will catch it before it even hits their customer, and we can fix it in a timely manner.
Thank you for that, Maxime. The second case study that we want to talk about isn't so much about how we helped a client adopt a CloudOps approach, but how having adopted a CloudOps approach provided long-term benefits that really justified the early commitment to standardization, training, and using infrastructure as code. In 2022, Netrix was approached by a global financial organization who, for a number of both business and compliance reasons, operational considerations, needed to consolidate multiple Azure Active Directory tenants into a single Azure AD. across their multiple existing Azure AD tenants, they had literally thousands of resources that were distributed across 4 different regions in 24 different subscriptions, and almost 100 resource groups, over 100 storage accounts. This included Windows 365, Exchange, SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive, and also managed resources like firewalls and key vaults and recovery services vault. If you've ever been part of a tenant-to-tenant migration, the old adage that 10% of the work takes 90% of the time applies. In Azure, when you refocus a subscription on a new Azure AD tenant, most of the resources move relatively easily with no extra consideration or planning required. But some of the resources, specifically storage accounts, key vaults, managed database instances, have some pretty extensive both pre and post work that needs to be done, both to prepare for a tenant-to-tenant migration and also in the aftermath. This particular financial organization had previously committed to managing all resources in Azure with Terraform. Part of that was the fact that they had this multi-tenant environment with subscriptions and resources associated with multiple Azure AD tenants, and they needed to be able to standardize implementations across that. What they didn't realize is that once they were consolidating all these tenant-to-tenant migrations, all these Azure AD tenants into one, that a lot of those resource dependencies that I mentioned were easy to simply redeploy. Instead of for instance, when you pick up an Azure Key Vault, when you pick up a subscription containing an Azure Key Vault and move its Azure AD subscription, all of the policies apply. The work is not missing, and the secrets stored in the Key Vault are present, but none of the policy associations with the users and groups and enterprise applications in the Azure environment, none of those survive the move. So you have to back them up before. There's kind of a complicated process of reconciling those and mapping them to the new object IDs and the new Azure AD tenant. By simply leveraging the work they've done to deploy these tools with IAC, all we had to do was rerun the Terraform modules once the tenant-to-tenant migration was done, and all of that work came over without the complicated backup and restore process. Not only does it apply to Azure Key Vault policies, this applies to file level permissions in storage accounts. This applies to role-based access control in Azure. This applies to integrated authentication in a variety of RDS and other database platforms. And so the long-term benefit for this global financial organization was taking a tenant-to-tenant migration that could have required hundreds of hours of prep and post-cutover work and reducing those hundreds of hours to just a few hours of reprocessing the Terraform modules that built them in the first place. Add to that the fact that we did these migrations starting with the development environment, moved through the subscriptions that were related to the staging and UAT environments before we cut over to prod. This applying a DevOps approach to your cloud operations made this one of the easiest tenant-to-tenant migrations we've done, but ironically also one of the largest, but because they had invested early in CloudOps, they really saw some long-term benefits of that. So I'm going to take a pause and a breath here and go over and look and see if anyone has posted any questions from the audience. I don't see any. So how you might bring in a partner like Netrix to help streamline your adoption of CloudOps. We're going to start by advising you on the front end with best practices for CloudOps adoption and optimization. We're going to look at really three things, which are collaboration, and we're going to focus on a CI/CD pipeline approach, which will also facilitate automation and management. Look for collaboration with peers. Look for code approval work streams within Azure DevOps to validate that all the standards of various deployments are being met prior to executing the final deployment into your dev, staging, and prod environments. Then we're going to look at your deployment approach, and we're going to look for ways to ensure seamless operations, really to try to remove the hurdles on the road that require unnecessary manual processes, to really take the automation and use it to streamline operations, to enhance efficiency, and with all of those in place, really achieve the kind of scalability that people are looking for from the cloud. Look at each of your solutions and determine whether a vertical or a horizontal scaling approach is the right approach, and then leverage that using the IAC platform that your organization has adopted. Finally, the day-to-day operations, we're really gonna look to adhere to those DevOps principles in the building and management and operation of your cloud resources, and use things like policies, use things like monitors to make sure that that the principles that you've implemented are being adhered to in your deployments. And finally, by taking the efficiency, the scalability, the automation, the overall optimization, we're really gonna allow you to leverage your infrastructure for continuous, reiterative innovation. And again, you'll start to see very quickly some of the real world results, the improved uptime, that Maxi talked about with the IaaS provider, the enhanced collaboration, the instant response to outages, and then the long-term flexible responses to future unpredictable needs that the global financial organization saw in that case study that we talked about. Maxi, anything to add here?
No, I think that we can continue with this slide. Of course, if any of you folks here wants to contact us, have a little talk with our experts, or have a demo as well, you can contact us at info@netrixllc.com, and one of our team will, of course, answer, and we can follow up on that communication thread.
And our approach to requests from our clients will be tailored to your needs. We can come in with a sort of an out-of-the-box CloudOps prepackaged CloudOps approach for you to kick the tires on, or we can come in with more of a top-down, looking at your existing platform and helping you tailor something very specifically for your organization.
Great. Let's wait.
And actually, I'm happy to tell you that I said those words right as the clock kicked over on the 45-minute mark, which was our target. So excellent execution.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for joining here today.